Welcome to LG Path Lab's monthly pathology webinar series organized by Dr. Lindsay Gupta. I would like to thank Dr. Lindsay for inviting me to take this talk on this platform. I'm Dr. Pooja Bakshi, Senior Consultant and Head Cytopathology at Sir Ganga Ram Hospital, New Delhi, India. In my previous talk, I had covered usual ductal adenocarcinoma of pancreas, its variants, and chronic pancreatitis. Today, my talk is on unusual tumors of pancreas, cytology diagnosis, and approach. The focus of my talk will be on cytomorphology, differential diagnosis and morphological overlaps, role of immunohistochemistry and cell block, and recent updates in this area. 80% of pancreatic tumors are usual ductal adenocarcinomas. Only 20% are other unusual tumors. It is a very broad heterogeneous group. Radiology may not distinguish them from the usual ductal adenocarcinomas, and that is a challenge, as it is important to differentiate because the therapeutic approach and prognosis is different for these tumors. Cytology here can play a crucial role in diagnosis and is often the first line of investigation. Sampling of these pancreatic lesions for cytology can be done by ultrasound or CT-guided FNA, ERCP brushings. However, the endoscopic ultrasound has gained wide acceptance, and EUS FNA is widely accepted for procurement of cells and sampling of even small lesions from the pancreas. It is now the preferred method of choice. The adequacy rates of EUS FNA are much higher, and it has high sensitivity, specificity, and diagnostic accuracy. At our center, we routinely do endoscopic ultrasound-guided FNA with or without rapid on-site evaluation for pancreatic lesions. Air-dried and wet-fixed smears are prepared and stained with May-Grunwald Giemsa and Papineau-Coulon stain, respectively. It is preferable to prepare a cell block, as you can use this for immunohistochemistry. Material can also be taken for liquid-based cytology and for molecular studies. So the ductal adenocarcinoma, its variants in cystic neoplasms I'll not be covering, and this is the group of tumors that I will be covering in today's lecture. The Papineau-Coulon Society of Cytopathology System for reporting pancreatobiliary cytology is popular worldwide, and it divides into 6 diagnostic categories, each with its own risk of malignancy. The non-diagnostic, negative, atypical, neoplastic benign, which includes serous cyst adenoma, neuroendocrine microadenoma and lymphangioma, and neoplastic other, that is neoplasms that are pre-malignant or of low malignant potential. And this includes well-differentiated neuroendocrine tumor, the mucinous tumors, and the solid pseudopapillary neoplasm. The next 2 categories are suspicious and the malignant. So let's go to the cases. This was a 69-year-old male, came with mild abdominal discomfort, and on further investigations and imaging, showed a 6 into 6.5 millimeter mass lesion in the alternate process of pancreas on endoscopic ultrasound. The mass was hyperechoic with well-defined margins. EUS FNA was done. The smears, as you can see, are very cellular, and the cells are singly dispersed and non-cohesive. If you see the arrangement of these cells, they are arranged in acini, in a perivascular arrangement here around the blood vessels, pseudo-rosetting, and on higher power, the tumor cells are showing a characteristic plasmacytoid appearance with eccentric nuclei. The cells are uniform, they are small, round, monotonous, with a classic plasmacytoid appearance. Few binucleate forms are also seen. And if you see the higher par here, the chromatin is very stippled or salt and peppery chromatin with small to inconspicuous nucleoli. So with this morphology, what came to our mind was, is it a pancreatic neuroendocrine tumor? However, remember that there are many morphological overlaps with other pancreatic tumors, especially with solid pseudopapillary tumor, acinar cell carcinoma, lymphoma, even well-differentiated ductal adenocarcinoma, normal acinar epithelium, and plasmacytoma. The high-grade neuroendocrine carcinomas include differentials of metastatic small cell carcinoma from the lung, lymphoma, PNET, whereas the large cell neuroendocrine carcinomas need to be differentiated from poorly differentiated adenocarcinomas. So what can we do further to confirm the diagnosis? Immunohistochemistry is of great help, and the neuroendocrine markers, that is synaptophysin, chromogranin, CD56, INSM1. So these are the markers which can be used for demonstrating neuroendocrine differentiation. Cytokeratin is often positive, and beta-catenin does not show the characteristic nuclear staining which is seen with other tumors. So in this case too, we had a cell block which is showing this organoid pattern of tumor cells, which are small, round to oval. Synaptophysin was strongly positive. It is a sensitive marker. Chromogranin was also strongly positive. It is a very specific marker. And beta-catenin did not show nuclear staining. The Ki was less than 2%. Hence, we signed this tumor out as a well-differentiated pancreatic neuroendocrine tumor grade 1. Another case, this was a higher grade, grade 3, poorly differentiated neuroendocrine carcinoma. As you can see, the smears are highly cellular and the cells are very closely packed together. The NC ratio is high, there is very scant cytoplasm, and in this lower picture, you can appreciate this nuclear molding. There was necrosis and apoptotic bodies in the background. So this was a poorly differentiated neuroendocrine carcinoma. The Ki67 was more than 20%. These tumors are either of the small cell carcinoma type or the large cell type, and they are often associated with a rapidly progressive clinical course. So WHO recently in 2017 revised its grading system of pancreatic neuroendocrine neoplasms. They are now divided into the well-differentiated and the poorly differentiated tumors, and further into grade 1, 2, and 3 based on the mitosis or the Ki67 index. Grade 1 is less than 3%, grade 2, 3 to 20%, while grade 3 is more than 20%. The well-differentiated and poorly differentiated is based on morphology. So this new subset of well-differentiated high-grade has now been recognized. That is, lesions that are morphologically well-differentiated but have a high Ki index of more than 20%. That is pancreatic neuroendocrine tumor grade 3. The genomic features of this subgroup resemble those of the lower grade neuroendocrine tumors. That is, they show MER1, TAX, and ATRX mutation. This differs from the genomic alterations which are seen in the poorly differentiated neuroendocrine carcinomas, which show KRAS, P53, SMAD4, and RB1 mutation. Studies have shown that if you perform Ki67 proliferation index on the cell blocks, which are good cellularity, then there is a good correlation with the histological grading, especially in the higher grade lesions. Clinically, these tumors are, majority are non-functional and they are often discovered incidentally on imaging. They can occur at any age. They appear as small, round, well-circumscribed solid masses on imaging. Rarely they may be large and cystic. One must be aware of the rare variants of neuroendocrine neoplasms. Lipid-rich variant is more aggressive. It has very finely vacuolated cytoplasm and can be misdiagnosed as metastasis from a renal cell carcinoma of the clear cell type. Oncocytic variant, again more aggressive, seen mostly in males. They are larger lesions, they are high grade, and may be misdiagnosed as acinar cell carcinoma. The other described variants include pleomorphic, rhabdoid, pigmented, and the clear cell type. A very interesting case I would like to share with you. This was a 32-year-old male who came with a mass between the duodenum and the uncinate process of pancreas. An endoscopic ultrasound-guided FNA was done, and the smear showed this abundant eosinophilic, homogeneous, dense amorphous matrix. And on careful view, there were neoplastic cells which were embedded within this matrix. This is the higher power view of these neoplastic cells. And you can see these are small, round to oval with minimal pleomorphism, very fine chromatin, some acinar and pseudo-rosette arrangement here. These cells on immunohistochemistry were synaptophysin and chromogranin positive, exhibiting neuroendocrine differentiation. This matrix material on Congo red was positive and showed apple green birefringence under polarized light. So this was amyloid. And this was a case of an amyloid-rich pancreatic neuroendocrine tumor. This is a very rare variant and can be a potential pitfall mimicking fibrotic conditions like fibromatosis if you do not pay attention to the nature of this matrix and the neoplastic cells embedded in it. The next case was a 35-year-old female who presented with a solid cystic mass in the pancreatic head on endoscopic ultrasound. These are the FNA smears. As you can see, the smears are highly cellular, and you can appreciate the Chinese letter-like arrangement of these cells. Again here, the cells are arranged around delicate fibrovascular cores, and they are dropping off from these cores with multi-layered arrangement around these vessels, giving a pseudopapillary arrangement. Here again, some pseudopapillae. On further higher power, these tumor cells, which are dispersed in the background, are very uniform, monotonous, singly dispersed, show fine chromatin and presence of these nuclear grooves. Another characteristic feature we noted was the presence of these eosinophilic hyaline globules, which were PS, positive and diastase resistant. So with these monomorphic cells with a perivascular arrangement and these bland nuclei, was it a pancreatic neuroendocrine tumor or was it a solid pseudopapillary tumor? So these two tumors can have a lot of morphological overlaps. And again, immunohistochemistry is very useful in their differentiation. Beta-catenin shows a characteristic nuclear positivity in the solid pseudopapillary tumor. CD10, progesterone receptor, CD99 are also often positive. Synaptophysin may show a focal weak positivity, whereas chromogranin is negative, and this helps to differentiate from the pancreatic neuroendocrine tumors. Some newer markers are TFE3, cyclin D1, and SOX11, which show nuclear positivity. On molecular analysis, there are somatic point mutations in exon 3 of the CTNB1, the gene which encodes beta-catenin. So in this case, we had the cell block and we did beta-catenin immunohistochemistry, and it showed a strong nuclear positivity in the tumor cells. CD10 was also positive. So this was a case of a solid pseudopapillary tumor of the pancreas. It's a rare pancreatic neoplasm with uncertain to low malignant potential with predilection for young women. Radiologically, it presents as a large, well-circumscribed, heterogeneous mass with variable proportion of solid and cystic components. An accurate pre-op diagnosis is desirable because they are amenable to surgery. Metastasis can occur in 5 to 15% of cases, mostly to peritoneum and liver. And the newer IHC markers, as I said, are TFE3 and SOX11, which along with beta-catenin form a very specific panel for diagnosis of this tumor. Going on to a rare tumor, which is acinar cell carcinoma. They are aggressive tumors presenting in older adults as solid masses, usually in the head of the pancreas, and they are large in size. They can have elevated serum alpha-fetoprotein levels. These are the molecular alterations which are known to occur along with alteration in the beta-catenin pathway. Prognosis is better than the usual ductal adenocarcinomas. I don't really have a case, so I've taken these microphotographs from the internet. The smears are cellular and show loosely cohesive clusters with predominant acinar formation, many strip nuclei, coarse chromatin, prominent nucleoli, and abundant granular cytoplasm. Immunohistochemistry is very essential to diagnose this tumor. Trypsin, chymotrypsin, lipase, and cytokeratin are positive. The normal pancreatic acini can look very similar. However, they are arranged more in cohesive lobulated groups. There are no naked nuclei. The chromatin is fine, nucleoli are small, and abundant granular cytoplasm is visible. Well-differentiated adenocarcinoma and pancreatic neuroendocrine tumors also need to be differentiated from this tumor. Pancreatoblastoma, again, a very uncommon tumor. It is aggressive, mostly seen in childhood in less than 10 years of age. They present as large heterogeneous solid masses and may show calcification. Serum alpha-fetoprotein is raised. Metastasis may be seen in almost 30% of patients at the time of diagnosis. It is characterized by presence of neoplastic cells with acinar differentiation and squamoid nests. On FNA, these neoplastic cells are seen as singly dispersed. The smears are cellular, blastoid-appearing cells with small nucleoli, granular cytoplasm. The squamoid nests are best seen on the cell block preparation. On immunohistochemistry, they are positive for the cytokeratins, trypsin, chymotrypsin, lipase, and may show patchy beta-catenin nuclear positivity. So if you see these 4 tumors that I have just described, imaging and cytological features, that is the architecture, nuclear, and cytoplasm, can help to differentiate on morphology between these 4 tumors. However, it is the immunohistochemistry which really clinches the diagnosis, with the neuroendocrine markers being positive, that is chromogranin and synaptophysin and cytokeratin in the neuroendocrine tumors, beta-catenin, CD10, vimentin being positive in the solid pseudopapillary tumors, whereas the acinar cell carcinomas are positive for cytokeratin, chymotrypsin, trypsin, and pancreatoblastomas are positive again for cytokeratin, chymotrypsin, trypsin, and may show patchy beta-catenin positivity. Going on to the next group of tumors, this was a 65-year-old male who came with pain in abdomen and on endoscopic ultrasound showed a cystic mass in the head of the pancreas, which was communicating with the main pancreatic duct. USFNA was done. As you can see, the smears were highly cellular and showed these papillary fragments of neoplastic epithelial cells, which were embedded in this thick tenacious mucin in the background. The cells were cuboidal to columnar and were bland with focal mild dysplasia. Few more photographs from this case, again showing the papillary epithelium, the columnar mucin producing cells. The CEA level in the cyst fluid was elevated, which was suggestive of a neoplastic mucinous cyst. And with this morphology, we thought this was an intraductal papillary mucinous neoplasm, which was further confirmed on resection. IPMNs can have either low-grade mucinous epithelium or high-grade epithelium. The low-grade epithelium shows a uniform monolayer of columnar cells with mucinous cytoplasm and bland basal nuclei, whereas the high-grade epithelium shows much more cytological atypia with high NC ratio, abnormal chromatin, single cells, necrosis, and a complex papillary pattern. So the intraductal neoplasms of pancreas can be divided into the IPMNs and the intraductal tubulopapillary neoplasm, or the ITPN. IPMNs mostly arise in elderly. They are intraductal, usually more than 1 centimeter. They are cystic and are formed of mucin-producing cells. They account for 10 to 15% of cystic neoplasms of pancreas. They arise in the main pancreatic duct or its branches, or may show a mixed pattern. Radiologically, they form single or multiple pancreatic cystic lesions, and the characteristic feature is that these tumors communicate with the main pancreatic duct or its branches, which is not seen with the mucinous cyst adenomas, which are its main differential diagnosis. Mucinous material may be seen protruding from the ampulla, which is called as the fisheye ampulla. The involved ducts are dilated and filled with visible papillae and varying amounts of mucus. Dysplasia can be classified as low, intermediate, and high grade. Usually, the high grade is associated with the main duct type, whereas the branch duct types are indolent and associated with low-grade dysplasia. However, these tumors are known to have a component of invasive carcinoma in 30% of the cases and diagnosis. Based on histology and the mucin immunophenotype, they can be further classified into gastric, intestinal, pancreatobiliary, or the oncocytic type. The main differentials, as I said, are mucinous cyst adenomas and the serous cyst adenomas. The mucinous nature of the cyst may be established by the presence of thick tenacious mucin in the smears, or by the raised CEA levels in the cyst fluid, or by the KRAS GNAS mutations. The intraductal tubulopapillary neoplasm is quite similar to the IPMN, except that it shows intraductal tubule-forming epithelial neoplasm and has high-grade dysplasia throughout without overt mucin production. The next group is the anaplastic or the undifferentiated carcinoma. These are malignant epithelial neoplasms in which a significant component does not show a definitive direction of differentiation. Usually it is seen in elderly, and there are three variants: the anaplastic giant cell carcinoma, sarcomatoid carcinoma, which shows predominantly cells with spindle cell morphology, and carcinosarcoma, which has two components of the adenocarcinoma and a high-grade spindle cell sarcoma component. Common to all these three is that the smears are highly cellular, stroma poor, and show poorly cohesive cells which are very pleomorphic with abundant mitosis, and on IHC are usually cytokeratin environmental positive. Just a word about a specific subtype, the undifferentiated carcinoma with osteoclast-like giant cells. It's a rare tumor. It shows round to spindle, highly pleomorphic neoplastic mononuclear cells and large non-neoplastic multinucleated giant cells. So the mononuclear cells are neoplastic, while the giant cells are the non-neoplastic component. The prognosis is poor. This was the case of an anaplastic giant cell carcinoma, and as you can see, the smears are highly cellular and show these loosely cohesive and singly dispersed tumor cells, which are interspersed with these highly bizarre multinucleated tumor giant cells. Chromatin is very coarse and there are multiple nucleoli. There is no definitive direction of differentiation. So differential, of course, the anaplastic large cell lymphoma, melanoma, and sarcomas have to be ruled out by using appropriate immunohistochemistry. This tumor was cytokeratin positive. Mesenchymal tumors are very rare in the pancreas and can include schwannoma, lymphangioma, lipoma, solitary fibrous tumor, leiomyosarcoma, malignant peripheral nerve sheath tumors, and PNETs. I will not go into details as they are very rare lesions and are similar to lesions elsewhere. Lymphoma can involve the pancreas and is usually a secondary involvement, as primary is very, very rare. Most of them are large B-cell lymphomas, and FNA is a very good modality to diagnose these tumors and prevent unnecessary surgery. As you can see here, the pancreatic ductal epithelial fragments can be seen here, and infiltrating in between are these immature lymphoid cells which have open chromatin, nucleoli, cleaving, and they are predominantly CD20 positive with CD3 negativity. Ancillary tests are very helpful in diagnosing these lesions, either flow cytometry or immunohistochemistry, and a differential includes chronic pancreatitis and autoimmune pancreatitis, which show infiltration by benign lymphocytes and plasma cells, and also differential includes metastatic tumors. Metastasis to pancreas is very infrequent, accounting for only 1 to 2% of all pancreatic tumors. FNA can play a very crucial role in diagnosis of these tumors. They can be notoriously tricky to diagnose because they resemble primary cancers of pancreas radiologically and also sometimes on morphology. So what are the important clues towards its diagnosis? One is a detailed clinical history. It's very important to have relevant clinical information. Any morphological deviation from the conventional adenocarcinoma should alert you to the diagnosis of this group of tumors. And of course, ancillary tests are very helpful in diagnosing these lesions. Comparison with the previous cytology or resection specimen can be helpful towards diagnosis. And the common tumors which metastasize to pancreas include renal cell carcinoma, adenocarcinoma from lung, stomach, colon, and breast, lung small cell carcinoma and squamous cell carcinoma, ovarian carcinomas, melanoma, hepatocellular carcinoma, and sarcomas. I'll just show you a case. This was a 73-year-old male who on endoscopic ultrasound showed diffuse enlargement of pancreas. He had a previous history of nephrectomy for renal cell carcinoma, clear cell type. And as you can see, the smear showed these sheets of polygonal epithelial cells, which had very abundant foamy vacuolated cytoplasm with central round nuclei, which were arranged at places around this fibrovascular cores. And you had prominent nuclei in many of these tube cells. So this was a case of metastasis of renal cell carcinoma to pancreas. Pancreatic metastases are rare, but renal cell carcinoma has a peculiar predilection for metastasis to pancreas and can occur years after treatment of the primary tumor. On imaging, it may show solitary or multiple masses or present as a diffuse infiltration of pancreas, as was seen in this case. These are hypervascular lesions on color Doppler, and this can be a pointer towards the diagnosis. Morphologically, they have to be differentiated from adenocarcinoma and pancreatic neuroendocrine tumors, especially the lipid-rich variant. Immunohistochemistry can be helpful. These are positive for PAX8, CD10, cytoskeleton, EMA, and vimentin, while they are negative for the neuroendocrine markers and for beta-catenin. Another case of a metastatic squamous cell carcinoma showing these fragments of keratinized and non-keratinizing squamous cell carcinoma. P40 was diffusely positive. He was a known case of squamous cell carcinoma of the tongue. Remember that pure primary squamous cell carcinoma is very rare, and commonly they are either a component of the adenosquamous carcinoma of the pancreas or is a metastasis from another organ. So lastly, coming to the role of cell block, it is a very useful and complementary diagnostic modality. It increases the diagnostic sensitivity and specificity, not only through morphology, but through the use of ancillary modalities like immunohistochemistry. It can be shared for research or second opinion, and multiple slides can be cut from the block. Cell block tissue can be used for molecular analysis, which can be helpful in guiding existing and future targeted therapies. So to conclude, cytomorphology is the main key to diagnosis in these unusual tumors of pancreas. However, cell block preparation and immunohistochemistry contributes immensely to diagnosis in this group of tumors. It is a multidisciplinary integrated approach with contribution by the cytopathologist, gastroenterologist, and the radiologist. With this, I come to the end of my talk. I again thank LG Path Labs for giving me this platform. If you have any questions, you may please leave them in the chat box and we will address them later. Thank you.